In this video, we ask a question that I am almost positive has not been asked on video before. How can gingerbread improve patient safety and reduce the cognitive load on nurses and doctors? Hello, I'm Colin Hung for Healthcare IT Today, and joining me on camera today are Julia Strandberg, Chief Business Leader of Connected Care and Monitoring at Philips, and Joyce DeAlla, also from Philips. She was kind enough to give me a demo of the Philips products at the recent AdvaMed MedTech Conference here in Toronto. Let's get to it. Julia, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the time.
I am excited to dive into today's topic, but maybe just for the benefit of our audience, Julia, can you give us a little bit about your background and what division of Philips that you work in?
Perfect. Thank you. Julia Strandberg, and I am the Chief Business Leader of Connected Care and an Executive Committee member of Royal Philips. And I'm super proud to be an executive sponsor of Philips Women Lead, which is the largest ERG organization in our Philips community. Maybe a little bit about me. I have a true passion for technology innovation with a focus on impact-driven and a market-moving innovation. And what I've said throughout my career is my experiences have always centered around where technology innovation meet market need. And that is absolutely critical and really the nexus of my entire career. But what I've come to appreciate and something we'll talk about today is it's not just innovation and market need. It is what I call as principles of product market fit, really making sure that you understand that you have a value proposition that comes into the market, right? And elements and principles of market development. So what are the market barriers that really stand in your way to create not just adoption or pilots, but true sustainable value for the marketplace? So with that, the last 25 years have been really this accumulated passion around patients, health systems, hospitals, and how do we go between and really bridge the gaps between where care is today and where care really needs to go. And I've had the pleasure of being with Philips for the last 18 months and have really had the proud moments of engaging some strategic partners across the globe to really create this bridge the gap of the connected system. So really thrilled to be here today.
Well, Julie, you've mentioned two things that are, very warming to my heart as a healthcare marketer. You said product market fit and working with patients. Those are two critical things. And you're so right. Like, there's no shortage of innovation, especially in healthcare. One of the challenges of healthcare is finding that product market fit. And understanding who really is your customer. Is
Right.
it the physician? Is it the caregiver? Is it the patient? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes miss the mark on that little piece, and that could spell the difference between success and failure when it comes to your device or solution.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, when you think about how care is moving, so traditionally, hub and spoke model, where we go to care delivery nodes to get our care, we know that care is now being delivered in our homes, in our bathrooms, wherever, right? And when you think about this transformation of an alternative care delivery model, you do have to think about those different stakeholders. So it's not just the C-suite of a health system, right? Or the clinician that does the job to be done and that care within that care node. It is also the patient or subsequently the person or consumer before that person even becomes a patient. And two areas that we all don't talk about too often is the community around. Like the caregiver around the patient itself plays a very meaningful role in how care is delivered, but more importantly, or equally as importantly, the outcomes. And then we can't forget in the US healthcare arena, the payer, right? The payer is the a pretty motivating force, because that's how you get paid for the value that you deliver into the ecosystem. So couldn't agree more. But why I wanted to bring up all that and kind of dovetail off was at Philips, and really my team, we've taken a step back to say, well, what is really the definition of what we just talked about, right? And whether it's product market fit, market development, different stakeholder groups, where care is moving, virtually anywhere. And we've kind of dubbed it what we call is servant innovation. And what servant innovation is, it's designed for and centered around both the caregiver as well as the patient. And it creates the humility to say, no one person can do it by yourself. No one company can do it by yourself. It is about an ecosystem of partnerships that's required to actually bring the solution together. And you're seeing that in pockets in North America and across the globe, because everybody's fixated on this. How do I deliver this certain servant innovation to maximize outcomes, efficiency, resourcing based, satisfaction, monitoring 24/7. But the reality is we got to come together as a community of med tech, consumer, et cetera, provider, and to really actually deliver this new transformation that we're walking ourselves into.
I'm reminded of an old adage, right? It takes a village to raise a child, and equally, what we're finding now is that it takes a village to care for the people who are ill and for the elderly. It
Exactly.
isn't just one anymore. Um,
Exactly.
and Julie, this is it's a nice segue, because what I wanted to talk to you about, and the reason why I was so anxious to get Philips on the program is because recently at the MedTech conference, Philips was showing and showcasing some interesting patient monitoring solutions, which of course are meant to help and allow patients to be at home and not be in a four walls of a hospital or an urgent care center or things like that. Can you tell me more about Philips' work in this area?
Yeah, sure. Let me maybe rewind the clock to fast forward. So if you really look at monitoring, and the comments that you made previously, is monitoring was monitors. It was a lot of hardware, right? A lot of hardware. And because it was a lot of hardware, there were a lot of gaps in that flow and continuum of care. Monitoring has very much traversed from monitors and hardware into software and solutions. So we are breaking through this new ground of digital transformation in such a meaningful way for monitoring. And what I would maybe, I'm not necessarily a betting person, but what I would suggest is we haven't really changed a whole lot in the last 30 years, right? In the context of care delivery and monitoring. But I believe in the next 10 years, given digital transformation, we are going to actually reshape or reimagine the way that care is truly delivered. That said, it takes all those stakeholders we just talked about to make sure we're in unison such that we can deliver the value to the system. So what we're doing at Philips is this digital transformation is absolutely like here and vibrant, where software, AI, clinical decision support, workflow optimization play what I call is a leading role in the innovations as we move forward, right? And not a side role. So we're building out new capabilities that you've seen in mobility, in data integration, in predictive models, all with the endpoint of outcomes, clinical, operational, and financial outcomes. So some of the things that you've seen across my portfolio come out, we have a brand new uh, central monitoring unit that's come out. It's called PIC IX. It's the 4.0 release. And in fact, we're on the 4.3 generation, where what we're doing is making sure that this monitoring ecosystem is open and interoperable such that it feeds, it allows us to take data from our monitoring, from others, other therapies and modalities that are not Philips, from the EMR, to really bring it all together such that we can create this really cogent package in a mobile format, such that we can enhance workflow optimization, and care outcomes associated with it. So one of these great innovations is this next generation portfolio that's coming into the market. On top of that, we have, I call it very kindly our little gingerbread man, but it's the visual patient avatar. And the visual patient avatar is a visual way of understanding changes in a patient's health status. And it is an AI-based tool that is visually displayed on our acute care monitors that show when a patient is cold. Maybe the avatar turns blue, right? Or when the heart is racing, you see the heart pumping a lot. And it is a combination of over, I think it's 16 precisely different parameters that come into place to determine what is going on with the patient, such that a clinician can make better decisions for what's going on with the patient, as opposed to just looking at the number and trying to self-integrate it into their mind. So those are two of many different innovations that we are that we have actually brought to the market, and we're looking to build our engagements with our strong partners across the globe.
While I was at the MedTech conference in Toronto, I got the story behind that gingerbread man. About how the anesthesiologist created it and how it works. And for those that kind of want a visual, I actually had a video of it in a separate summary. So definitely encourage you to do that. And it's so good because it is what do they call it? Situational awareness.
Yes.
It's sort of a very nice way to kind of quickly get an assessment of whether the patient is everything's okay, or whether there's something you might want to investigate further. Like you said, like is it turning blue because they're cold? Is the heart rate accelerated? Is it not fast enough? All those kinds of things can be easily seen through that gingerbread man icon.
Yeah, and just to play off that is, years ago, numbers. It was a number at a time, right? And you were asking the clinician, the nurse, the anesthesiologist, the intensivist to do all that computational integration in their mind, right? That is huge cognitive load, huge cognitive load. Now, what we've done is we're using more of our senses, right? Trending lines, right? Visual lines, auditory understanding to really, really understand how a clinician can act in the appropriate time for the patient with the appropriate therapeutic response. And it is really important not only to support clinicians in cognitive load, and we talk a lot about burnout, but we don't have enough clinicians serving the patients that we need. So can we use tools like this to actually augment and enable clinicians to make those timely decisions that are absolutely just so critical to the people that we're serving?
At this point, I'm going to pause my interview with Julia in order to show you what Julia and I have been talking about. So right now, what you're going to see is Joyce Daala from Philips giving me a demonstration of the Philips Gingerbread Man icon and how it works. I caught up with Joyce at the MedTech Conference in Toronto earlier in the year.
Hi, my name is Joyce Diala. I am a clinical architect from Philips Canada. And today I will be showing you one of our newer innovation, that's the Philips Visual Patient's Avatar. So on our patient monitor here, this helps to increase situational awareness in the OR. And how it works is it takes the patient's information and showcases it on the Philips Visual Avatar, or indicating the patient's overall status. So based on the information that's being collected, the visual avatar will change. So for example, here I have my patient. So say if the heart rate starts to increase, you'll see that the heart rate's icon here starts moving faster. The other nice example is, say if the oxygen saturation level goes down, you'll see the patient's avatar change. So it's a nice indication of the patient's status. So how this idea came about was it was developed by two anesthesiologists who are also pilots, and they got the idea from the airplane cockpits where you're monitoring so many different dials that it takes a while for you to put a picture in your head of like the outside. So they got that idea and they were like, oh, this is a nice feature if we can put it on the monitor, the patient monitor, because in the OR they're monitoring so many measurements, so many alarms. So it takes a while, not a while, but it takes a few seconds just to put a picture of that patient in your head. So instead of doing that, the monitor does it for you. So this is a nice monitor. This is a monitor. This is our transport monitor called the X3. So this allows for continuous monitoring, but as well as continuous data collection. So how this works is, say a patient was admitted to emerge, they'll connect the patients onto the monitor, so the cables will come from here, and now the patient needs to be transferred to ICU. Instead of removing that patient from all of the connections, from all the ECG leads, they'll just remove the monitor by pressing down and then removing it from the bedside monitor. The X3 becomes its fully functioning monitor, so here they have the ability to see the different measurements, and they can now take this and go to the next unit and plug it into the bedside monitor that's in that unit.
The visual patient avatar is sitting in a very high acuity space with a lot of, high acuity patients where seconds matter, right? But equally as important is when we look at people in the home, that same premise exists. We don't have enough people watching people, right, while they're in the home. How do we make sure that the data that we see coming from multiple data sources comes into appropriate manner? And so maybe what that means is, instead of not calling a patient that we've seen elevated weight scale and elevated blood pressure, for a whole, like 4 days, we call them on day one, right? And we say, what's going on with you today? Let's talk a little bit about this. Can we help you? Did you drink too much water, or is there something seriously going on? So we can actually intervene earlier. So there's so many additive effects, like we just play off the avatar. There's so many additive effects that are incredibly positive for care delivery today.
I want to dive deeper into that side of it. So, can you help me paint a picture here? In the home, I'm a patient at home. Is Philips? It sounds like what Philips has created is almost this hub where the devices, the EHR, all of the data elements that I may have available to me in the home are integrated into this Philips units, and is that kind of how it works?
So today, let me articulate. I have a business that is called Ambulatory Monitoring and Diagnostics. The business is founded on heart rhythm diagnostic services. So these are people that could be suspected of heart rhythm related issues, atrial fibrillation, etc. And we have a service that monitors them for a period of time from 2 days to 30 days to really understand the arc of what is really happening with them. The premise is diagnostic in nature. So we understand, we capture heart rhythms, we understand that, we send the information back to the clinician, they make a diagnosis to determine what therapeutic path they're on. But you can imagine that big pillar that we have in an ambulatory setting also very much applies to home beyond that of just heart rhythm conditions, right? And so we do have a portfolio. It's a virtual care portfolio. There are other organizations out there that do similar, but it is a mechanism of understanding chronic disease management, post-acute care management, for some of the big conditions that exist today, right? We have a lot of people that are leaving the hospital and the health system doesn't want them coming back, right? But they're still in a vulnerable state. So how do we make sure that we're maintaining and understanding their care and the information that's their physiologic information, such that we can intervene earlier? And we have a business that's predicated to that. Today, we do work with health systems, we do work with payers, and we do work with employers to really understand how we can, again, shape that arc of care. But what I'd love to do is just kind of talk about the why. So, and this is not a US-based phenomena. This is a global-based phenomena. So, because I've had many customers talk to me about this, is they talk about this care continuum in 3 ways, okay? They say prevent, which is clear, right? So I just talked to you about an example of our cardiac rhythm services on how do we create a diagnosis path to, if we can't prevent, but how do we have a healthy lifestyle? But I need to detect it if there's a problem. But once I get into the healthcare environment, I need to go fast. So it's about velocity through the system, right? But with equal or better outcomes. I need to go with speed and care through the high acuity center with outcomes and care. The way you can do it is to make sure that on the back end, when you're looking at management, once that person leaves that acuity facility, that you are actually measuring them in the most appropriate way or monitoring them such that you're giving them the appropriate chance for the best outcome possible. And so those three elements are really bound within how we think about delivering care under my umbrella, which is connected care.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Mhm.
And because so if I can just summarize very at a high level, Philips plays both in the at the high acuity side of the house and literally in the house at home, and you're allowing that free flow of information as well as providing some of the devices that allow someone to be at home and to have, as you call it, the most appropriate level of monitoring. Right. And you acknowledge that at the home, you introduce other elements because it's not just the cardiac rhythm that you're going to be measuring and monitoring. There's other elements that you're bringing in, and that
Of
all
course.
gets fed to the provider or the nurse, whoever is watching this patient, to kind of intervene earlier so that you're not waiting 4 days and then developing a more deep problem.
You got it. You got it.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Excellent. So I have to ask this question, Julia. I mean, because we've been dealing a lot with it here on Healthcare IT Today, and that is, of course, the security of all of these kinds of things that are now really outside of the control of the hospital because they're literally in someone's home. So can you tell me a little bit about the cybersecurity aspects of all of these devices and things, the software that you're putting into and allowing people to use in their homes?
Yeah. So first and foremost, cybersecurity plays an absolute critical role in delivering a software-based solution into healthcare. So that's point one. Point two is this is about Philips identifying a gold standard and making sure that we can support protection of data, privacy of data, and security of data. And clearly we're taking that seriously today. And it is because all too often these data breaches actually exist, right? And so so what we've done, at least at Philips, is it's built into our culture and our DNA. So this is not only designing with security in mind, okay, at the inception of a product, because that's critical important, but it's also embedded in the principles of our software development lifecycle, such that we have inception to actually cradle to grave from a software standpoint. So I think that's critically important. You've also seen that the FDA in particular is very much leaning forward on this matter and asking organizations like Philips and others to make sure that not only we comply, right, but we exceed the expectations because of the asset of patient data. So I do just want to kind of like throw that out there to make sure that we appreciate the criticality of the situation and how we're thinking about it. So let me answer it maybe in a couple of different ways. So on the PIC system, so the Patient Information Center, and this is our like new generation of central monitoring unit, mobile handhelds, et cetera. We've designed everything in. And what we've done is we're testing against military grade encryption for both data at rest and in transit. Okay. So that speaks to where it is, but where it's going, right? And we have achieved a level of Department of Defense level hardening and certified for military institutional implementation. And so I take that, with a lot of pride that we're doing that because that's critically important. And I have some examples, I'll share that. Equally as important is what you spoke to, which is outside of that contained set of the four walls of the hospital. Now, We are all working on that, and we partner with the likes of cloud providers and others to create a layer of cybersecurity as we see data flow coming from different devices into our systems. But we achieve the same level or similar level of security that is required. So that is not only a regulatory related issue, but it's a cultural related issue. And frankly, it's your ticket to play the game if you want to bridge the gap between healthcare and hospital level data and engagement and home level engagement. One of the examples that I just want to maybe talk briefly about is we had the opportunity to partner with the DEF CON biohacking village. It was, to demonstrate security resilience, right? And so you can imagine this world where everybody's trying to penetrate, and our pick was not penetrated. And so it wasn't compromised. So, I take great pride in what I'm communicating today and where we're going now. It is evolution. We'll continue to work on it. This is something that will, again, a ticket to play the game in software, monitoring, surveillance, and in the healthcare environment.
No, you're right. Cybersecurity is there is no finish line, right? Like it is always evolving as threats evolve, and but it's good to hear that Philips and other organizations are taking the security of their software and their solutions so seriously. You're talking about military grade encryption. That's those aren't words we normally hear in healthcare until now. So that's great. Um, Julie, you shared so much great information with us today. Where can people go to learn more about Philips and the products we've spoken about today?
Yeah, thank you so much for the time. So our website, philips.com, under products and patient monitoring is the best first place to go. Otherwise, I have a lot of really engaged commercial teammates that would love to engage your audience in deeper, more meaningful conversations.
Amazing. Well, Julia, thank you so much for being on the program. It was really fun to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, I want to thank Julia for hopping on camera to talk about the new products from Philips that are designed specifically for care at home. And to Joyce, who gave me a demo of that gingerbread icon that Julia and I spoke about. If you enjoyed this video, please mash that like button and click subscribe. Also, head over to healthcareittoday.com where you will find more great content like this. I'm Colin Hung. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you on the next video.